Welcome to the deep dive. You know, we take all those fascinating things that you want to learn about and just plunge headfirst into the research.
Love it.
And this time around, we are tackling the power of your own mind,
Ooh.
especially that mysterious subconscious part that's supposedly running the show most of the time, right?
Yeah.
You sent in some great material from Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Oh, yeah.
He's a cell biologist who's done some groundbreaking work on how our minds and bodies connect and how that impacts our lives.
It's really remarkable. You know how much we can actually uncover about ourselves when we look into this realm that's often overlooked.
Right.
Dr. Lipton's work is a fantastic place to start.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. Dr. Lipton says that a whopping 95% of our daily actions are actually driven by our subconscious, like a program essentially downloaded in our first 7 years of life.
Wow.
It's kind of mind-blowing, right?
It is. And to think, this isn't just some mystical concept, right? This is rooted in over 400 years of scientific observation.
Wow. Okay, so if most of our actions are driven by our subconscious, where does our conscious mind even come in?
You know, a good way to think about it is this. Your conscious mind is like the captain of a ship, making decisions and charting the course. But the subconscious mind is the engine room. It's powering the ship and keeping it running.
Right. So we might think we're in control, but there's this whole other operation happening below deck, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Lipton, he even shares his own struggles with relationships. That lasted for over 40 years, all stemming from his subconscious programming.
Oh, wow.
It shows just how deeply ingrained these patterns can be. But how exactly do we get programmed in the first place?
Well, Dr. Lipton points to childhood, specifically between the ages of 0 to 7, as the critical period. It's like a super absorbent phase where young children, they're in hypnotic state.
Oh, wow.
Their brains are operating predominantly in theta brainwaves. They're literally soaking up information from their environment like sponges,
Wow.
particularly from their parents, family, and community.
So if a child sees their parents constantly arguing, they're not just observing a disagreement. They're downloading a program about relationships being stressful and full of conflict.
Precisely. And the child doesn't have the cognitive ability at that point to analyze or filter the information. They just absorb it as truth.
Wow, that's heavy. No wonder so many of us carry baggage from our childhoods. Okay, so we have these subconscious programs running in the background, right? How do they actually affect our lives?
This is the fascinating part. These programs can impact everything, from our stress levels and relationships to our overall well-being.
Really?
Dr. Lipton even goes as far to say that our thoughts literally become our biology.
Hold on. You're saying what we think can actually affect our physical health?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Our brains are incredibly powerful. They translate our thoughts and beliefs into chemical signals that get released into our bloodstream.
Really?
Think about it. When you experience love and joy, you feel good, right? Well, that's because your brain is releasing hormones like dopamine and oxytocin. But when you're stressed or afraid, your body gets flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, the stress hormones. Yeah.
So if we're constantly dwelling on negative thoughts, we're essentially pumping our bodies full of these stress chemicals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's where things get even more interesting. This is where epigenetics comes in.
Okay, I've heard that word thrown around, but I'm not sure I fully understand it. Can you break it down for us?
Of course. So think of your genes like a light switch. They can be turned on or off.
Okay.
Epigenetics basically tells us that our environment and perceptions, so what we experience and how we interpret it, can actually flip those switches. They affect how our genes express themselves.
So even if we have a genetic predisposition to something, our environment and our experiences can either trigger it or keep it dormant.
Precisely. And Dr. Lipton emphasizes this by pointing out a startling fact. Less than 1% of disease is actually caused by our genes.
So what?
Over 90% is linked to stress.
Whoa, that's a game changer. So it's not just about our DNA, it's about our mind-body connection and how our thoughts and perceptions are literally shaping our reality. But here's the big question, right? If these subconscious programs are so powerful and ingrained, can we actually change them?
That's the question everyone wants answered, right?
Right, yeah.
And luckily, Dr. Lipton offers not just one, but 3 methods for reprogramming the subconscious mind.
Right. Let's hear them. What's the first method?
Well, the first method is hypnosis. Remember how we talked about those theta brainwaves?
Yeah.
They're so dominant in childhood, while we naturally cycle through theta every night as we fall asleep.
So we can basically hack that state to our advantage.
Exactly. You know, there are audiobooks and recordings specifically designed to reprogram the subconscious mind
Cool.
with positive affirmations while you're sleeping.
Okay.
You might not consciously hear them, but your subconscious is soaking it all in.
That's so cool. It's like sneaking in some positive vibes while your conscious mind is off duty. Okay, what about the second method?
The second method is what Dr. Lipton calls habituation,
Okay.
and it's all about conscious repetition. Think of it like an actor rehearsing for a role.
Okay.
They practice their lines and movements until they become second nature.
Right.
In this case, you're the actor, and the role is the person you want to become.
So even if I don't feel confident, for example, I can act confident until it eventually becomes a part of me.
Precisely. I used to be incredibly self-critical. It was like a constant negative loop in my head, so I started practicing self-compassion, speaking to myself with kindness and understanding.
Yeah.
At first, it felt so forced and unnatural,
Yeah.
but the more I did it, the more automatic it became.
Oh, wow.
And eventually, I started to believe those positive things that I was telling myself.
That's really inspiring. It shows we have the power to rewire our brains, even as adults. Okay, you mentioned a third method. What's that all about?
The third method is energy psychology.
Okay.
It's a relatively new field that uses techniques like superlearning
Right.
to rewrite those subconscious programs, sometimes in a matter of minutes.
Wait, minutes? That sounds almost too good to be true.
I know, right? It's a bit mind-blowing. Dr. Lipton actually lists 25 different energy psychology modalities on his website if you want to explore further.
Definitely adding that to my to-do list.
Yeah.
Now, I know we've been talking about these programs in a general sense, but relationships seem to be where they really play out, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our relationships, romantic or otherwise, they often become the stage where these subconscious programs are acted out.
Right.
We unconsciously seek out partners and friends who mirror our childhood dynamics.
So we're drawn to people who help us replay our old familiar patterns, even if those patterns are painful.
It's like a subconscious drive to heal those old wounds, even if we're not consciously aware of it.
Right.
But as you can imagine, it often creates a vicious cycle. People jump from relationship to relationship, blaming the other person for the problems, not realizing that they're carrying the same program into each new situation.
Ouch. That's a tough pill to swallow. But it makes so much sense. Okay, what about that initial honeymoon phase everyone talks about? How does that fit into this subconscious programming thing?
The honeymoon phase. That's the magical time when everything is new and exciting, right?
Yes.
We're so smitten with our partner, and the
Yes.
world seems like a beautiful place.
I think we're seeing everything through rose-colored glasses.
Exactly. During that phase, we're very much driven by our conscious minds and desires.
Okay.
We're mindful, we're present, we're fully engaged.
Yeah.
But as that initial excitement fades and stress and routine kind of creep back in, guess who takes over?
The subconscious, with all its baggage.
Right. And those old programs about relationships, the ones downloaded in childhood, they start to surface.
So how do we stay in that honeymoon mindset? How do we prevent the subconscious from ruining things?
It takes effort, but it is possible. We have to become aware of our thoughts, our reactions, and the triggers that send us spiraling back into those old patterns.
So we have to become detectives of our own minds.
Exactly. And that's where those reprogramming techniques come in.
Right.
The more we can replace those negative programs with positive ones, the more we'll show up differently in our relationships.
So instead of reacting from a place of fear and insecurity, we can respond from a place of love and understanding. I like that.
And the more we practice, the more those new positive programs will become our default setting.
This is all so incredibly powerful. Feels like we're only scratching the surface here.
Well, that's the beauty of a deep dive. There's always more to discover.
Okay, so we've talked about how these subconscious programs affect our lives and especially our relationships. But what about Dr. Lipton himself? He had his own personal transformation, right?
He did. And it's a powerful testament to the fact that it's never too late to change. As I mentioned, he struggled in his relationships for over 40 years, despite his scientific knowledge.
It's amazing how even the most brilliant minds can be held back by their subconscious programming. But he was able to turn things around.
He did. Once he understood the mechanics of the subconscious mind, he applied those same techniques that we've been discussing: hypnosis, habituation, maybe even energy psychology,
Right.
to reprogram his own beliefs about love and relationships.
That's incredible. And what were the results? Did it actually work?
It did. Dr. Lipton met his partner Margaret when he was 50, and they've been together ever since, living what he calls a 25-year honeymoon.
Okay, that's the dream.
Yeah.
What did he actually change about his programming to make that happen?
He realized that his subconscious program was based on the dysfunctional relationship that he witnessed between his parents,
Right.
and he was subconsciously attracting partners who would help him recreate that dynamic.
That's that cycle we were talking about earlier. So how did he break free?
He made a conscious decision to rewrite his program, replacing those old beliefs with new ones. Beliefs based on love, respect, and equality.
And that's the power of choice. We can literally choose to think and believe differently. And those choices can change our reality.
Exactly. And if you recall our discussion about the honeymoon phase,
Yeah.
it illustrates the power of the conscious mind. Dr. Lipton describes it as a time when we're operating primarily from our conscious desires.
Because we're so present and focused on our partner, that those old subconscious programs don't stand a chance.
Right. But as the relationship progresses and that initial excitement fades,
Right.
the subconscious can creep back in.
With those old familiar patterns resurfacing. So how do we maintain that honeymoon mindset, that conscious connection, even when the initial spark fades?
It's about being mindful, staying aware of those triggers that can send us back into old patterns, and consciously choosing to respond differently.
So instead of letting those old programs run the show, we become the director, choosing a different script.
Exactly. And that's where the reprogramming techniques can be incredibly helpful.
So we can actually rewrite our love stories, so to speak.
You got it. It's about shifting from fear and insecurity to love and compassion.
This is all so inspiring. It's like a whole new way of looking at relationships.
It is. And these principles apply to all our relationships with family, friends, colleagues, and even ourselves.
It's about creating a sense of inner harmony that radiates outward into every area of our lives. Dr. Lipton even talks about creating heaven on earth.
He does. And it's not about some far-off mystical place.
Right.
It's about consciously choosing to focus on love, joy, and connection in our everyday lives.
So instead of getting caught up in the drama and the negativity of the outside world, we cultivate peace and happiness from within.
Precisely. We become proactive, not reactive.
I like that.
We choose to see the good, appreciate the beauty around us, and
Yeah.
approach life with gratitude.
That's beautiful. But it also sounds like a lot of work.
It is work, no doubt, but it's the most important work we can do.
Right.
It's about taking responsibility for our own happiness and well-being and recognizing the power we have to change our thoughts, our beliefs,
Yeah.
and ultimately our lives.
And Dr. Lipton's living proof that it's possible.
Absolutely. He transformed his own life and relationships, going from struggle to experiencing what he calls a 25-year honeymoon.
That's the message I want our listeners to take away from this deep dive. No matter what your past has been, no matter what challenges you're facing, you have the power to create a happier, healthier, more loving life.
So well said.
We often underestimate the power of our minds. We get so caught up in external circumstances that we forget we have an inner world that we can control.
And that's the key, isn't it? We have to become the masters of our own minds. We have to choose our thoughts wisely because they create our reality.
Which brings up a question, sir, right? If we're essentially in control of our reality, does that mean we're also responsible for everything that happens to us?
That's a question that's been debated for centuries.
Right.
And Dr. Lipton tackles it head on.
Okay.
He suggests that we live in a participatory universe,
Yeah.
meaning our energy and intentions actually influence the world around us.
Wait, are you saying we're not just passive observers?
Yeah,
They were active participants in creating our own reality.
exactly. Which brings up another question. If we're creating our own reality, are we then responsible for every illness, every misfortune, every negative experience?
It's a heavy burden to bear.
Yeah.
Surely some things are just beyond our control, right?
Of course, we can't control everything.
Right.
But what Dr. Lipton proposes is that we can control our reactions. We can choose how we perceive things. And those perceptions shape our experience.
So it's not about blaming ourselves for everything that goes wrong. It's about taking ownership of our power to respond in a positive and empowered way.
Precisely. And this is why it's so important to do that inner work, that conscious reprogramming of our subconscious minds.
Right.
The more we cultivate love, compassion, and positivity within, the more resilient we'll be when life throws us curveballs.
It's like building an inner fortress of positivity that can withstand anything.
I love that. It's about creating a foundation of self-love and acceptance that helps us navigate life's ups and downs.
Which brings us back to Dr. Lipton's transformation. He didn't just change his beliefs about relationships, he shifted his entire outlook on life.
Exactly. He went from a mindset of scarcity and fear
Yeah.
to one of abundance and love. And that shift affected everything.
So it's not just about changing individual programs, it's about a fundamental shift in consciousness.
Yes. And that's where things get really exciting. Because if we can create that shift within ourselves, we can create ripple effects outward.
Okay, now you're talking.
Yeah.
But how do we create that kind of global transformation? Where do we even begin?
It begins with each of us taking responsibility for our own thoughts, beliefs, and actions.
Fine.
It's about making a conscious choice to live in love, harmony, and peace.
So the revolution starts within. I love that.
And remember, it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about progress, about constantly striving to become the best versions of ourselves.
Which brings us back to Dr. Lipton's core message. Heaven on earth is a reality. It's not some far-off destination, but a state of being that we can cultivate right here, right now.
Beautifully put.
This has been an incredibly inspiring deep dive. But before we get too carried away with visions of utopia, let's bring it back down to earth for a moment.
Okay.
What are some practical things our listeners can do to start reprogramming their minds for a happier, healthier life?
That's a great question. And I think it's important to remember that this is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There's no quick fix. There's no magic bullet.
It's about consistency and commitment. We have to put in the work, but where do we even start?
Dr. Lipton suggests beginning with self-awareness.
Yeah.
Pay attention to your inner dialogue. What are you saying to yourself? Are your thoughts primarily positive or negative?
That's a great starting point. You know, becoming aware of those subconscious programs running in the background. But once we've identified those negative thought patterns, how do we actually change them?
That's where those reprogramming techniques we discussed come in. Hypnosis, habituation, and energy psychology.
And if any of those techniques sound intriguing, check out the show notes for links to Dr. Lipton's work and resources on energy psychology.
And remember, even small changes can make a big difference. Start by incorporating positive affirmations into your day.
Maybe listen to some uplifting music or spend some time in nature.
Surround yourself with positive people and experiences.
And be patient. This is a process, and it takes time.
But the rewards, a happier, healthier, more loving life, are immeasurable.
Okay, on that note, I think it's time to shift gears. We're going to wrap up our deep dive with some final thoughts from Dr. Lipton's work and leave you with something to ponder. You know, as we've been exploring Dr. Lipton's work, I keep thinking about that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Oh, it's true, isn't it? We can provide all this information about the power of the subconscious mind. But it's up to each individual to take that knowledge and actually apply it.
So it really comes down to personal responsibility. We can't just sit back and wait for change to happen. We have to be active participants in creating it.
And that's where things become truly empowering. You know, when we realize we have the power to change our thoughts, our beliefs, and our behaviors, we become the architects of our own lives.
It's like we're no longer victims of circumstance or slaves to our past. We can be the creators of our own reality.
Exactly. And that's a profound shift. It's moving from feeling powerless to feeling empowered, from being a passenger to being the driver.
It's like taking the wheel and steering our lives in the direction we want to go. But it can also be a bit daunting, right? If we're really in control, does that mean we're also to blame when things don't go our way?
That's true, but it's also incredibly liberating, because if we are responsible for our own happiness, we also have the power to create it.
It's no longer about being at the mercy of external circumstances, right? We can cultivate our inner world, creating this garden of positivity and love that we nurture and help it grow.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And that's precisely what Dr. Lipton encourages us to do. Explore the potential of our minds, tap into the power of love, and create a world that reflects our highest aspirations.
So instead of dwelling on what we lack, we can focus on what we want to create. We can become conscious creators, shaping our reality with our thoughts, beliefs, and actions.
And remember, it's a collective effort. When we change ourselves, we contribute to changing the world around us. The more people who embrace this mindset, the more we'll see that love and positivity reflected back to us.
So it's not just about individual transformation, it's about contributing to a global shift in consciousness.
Exactly. It's about understanding our interconnectedness and the ripple effect our choices and energy have on the world.
So if we want a world filled with love, peace, and abundance. We must embody those qualities ourselves.
We become the change we want to see, radiating that love and positivity outward, and hopefully inspiring others to do the same.
That's a vision I think we can all get behind. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a practical question to ponder.
Oh, I like this. What's one small step you can take today to start reprogramming your mind for a happier and healthier life?
Maybe it's incorporating a positive affirmation into your morning routine, or taking a few minutes to meditate and connect with your inner peace.
Perhaps reach out to a loved one expressing your gratitude and appreciation.
Whatever it is, take action. Make a conscious choice to move in the direction of love, joy, and abundance.
And remember, you are not alone on this journey. We are all in this together, co-creating a world that reflects our highest aspirations.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the power of the subconscious mind. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and inspiration along the way. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to Dr. Lipton's work and other resources we've mentioned.
And remember to check back daily for new episodes of The Deep Dive, where we explore a wide range of fascinating topics. If you're looking for more personalized guidance on your journey of transformation, visit www.ultimatemasters.org/coaching for more information.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep exploring the infinite possibilities within you.